Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a Havencraft deck. So this Havencraft deck is not your normal Havencraft deck. It is neither a Tenko deck or a Summit deck. I was trying to think, blanking on the complete opposite names, but this one is a much more pure Haven deck, I would say. Of course, a lot of the cards, again, like our previous video, will be rotating out very soon, but this deck was interesting enough for me to want to cover now, so why not? It runs a very similar early game to most other decks, but it begins to change when you see stuff like Beastly Val, Pegasus Dullahan, which isn't typically run now much. Sometimes in Tenko, most of the time people will trade out something else, but very interesting. Zoe, Queen of Goldenia, really cool, deal 2 damage to a random melee follower. We are running the Berserker card, which is a variation on the Temple Ogre card, so if you do want to run Temple Ogre, of course you can. This was just really cool because I wanted to run it. But this is when 2 damage or less is dealt to this follower, reduce it to 0 and gain +1 defense. So that works really nicely with Zoe, Queen of Goldenia, and Dark Janine, both working amazingly. Plus, it also works well against things like Forest, which is great. Then we have Ancient Protector, which combos well with Pegasus Dullahan and gives you amulet removal and defense. Pure Annihilation, great bulk removal, and then just Aether and Aegis as your top end. So Aether works well because you can pull pretty much anything, Dark Janine, Berserker, Pegasus, anything in that category that you need, but then also go the opposite way and pull Aegis if you need it as well. So really nice, and then your amulets are just really your early game to really push it. So we're going to get right into it and check it out. So as with all Haven decks, most typically Shadow isn't the easiest matchup to win, but because Shadow is currently one of the weaker decks, it's very easy for Haven to completely roll them. I reckon that will change with the expansion, things will shift, and we might see a whole evolution to the current meta where things will just be very different, which is to be expected. Right now, I couldn't find a deck necessarily that could absolutely crush this one, as I just haven't had enough variations in my matchups to really tell you exactly what this deck loses to. But what I can tell you is, this deck surprised me with how strong it was. It dealt quite well with this Shadow player, and dealt well in my next match that I'm going to show you. So it's quite a alright deck. Of course, it does help when our opponent doesn't play much in the early game, but even when they do, as long as you've got a strong beginning with Snow White, Blackened Scripture, or any other really good amulets, you should easily be able to secure the game. And of course, Corpse Lord of Woe is a great target for Blackened Scripture, so even if the Snow White was to have died, we would have easily been able to deal with this. You can't really go wrong with a Holy Tiger on 4 when you still have full points. So our Blackened Scripture, very easy to use. Going to pretty much instantly remove this, no issues at all. Moria, great draw power and a good removal card, and we have our Berserker as our setup. Belenus, the Shining, not really too much of an issue. I mean, it sucks that they're able to deal my board so well, but I'm willing to accept that. So I get a chance to play the Berserker. It's not easy for most decks to deal with Berserker effectively. Of course, they do happen to have Zombie Party on hand, which is good, and good that we baited it out early. But I don't mind using Zoe, even if it's just as a beat stick, as the 3/4 stat line does work pretty nicely. So I do go for the double Snow White, just building our board up a little bit. Even if we lose it, not the worst thing in the world to happen to me. Our opponent's really looking for draw with this card. So they did a good job. They, so far, procced one of them. And Moon and Sun is also not bad either. But Moon and Sun is going to be pretty much instantly removed, as I really hate having to deal with it. But I do decide to at least leave it up this turn and just kind of deal with it. I probably should have used Blackened Scripture on it immediately, but I really wanted to try and at least defend against everything else first, and hopefully set up a better board to deal with. Was that the right move? Probably not, but I think it was at least worthwhile. So Pure Annihilation and Blackened Scripture are going to wipe the board clean, and we get to hold on to our Dark Janine, which is great. And I can even use Zoe, which once we play Heavenly Aegis won't be a real issue. So even at the cost of a follower, I'm willing to do that. So there is the Ceres of the Night. This is where things are going to get a little tricky. I mean, double Ceres does imply double the healing. And it does mean that I need to be able to deal with these pretty well. And I don't really make the greatest decision. I mean, the Aegis is good. I definitely should have went for the Evo on the Aegis and killed one of these Ceres, so definitely a huge misplay on my part, but I guess I really just wasn't paying attention when I made that play initially. Not that the Aegis is really a big threat to me right now, it just would have helped me as I wouldn't have had to deal with as much healing, and I would have at least had them down to like 2 health next turn. There is the Ancient Protector. And we can finally just throw our Aegis. I mean, why not? I do go for the either because I didn't want to use Dark Janine and boost all their cards yet. I'd much rather save that for next turn when I can really take advantage of it. Plus, summoning a second Aegis makes it nearly impossible for them to win no matter what they do, because we are going to have 20 damage. So unless they would have warded up, I don't think they would have stood a chance. So ward would have been their only option, and to my knowledge they don't really run anything that could have been a big threat to me. So they do go for a nice bit of healing, but I mean, how do you beat 22 damage total with Dark Janine? Like, you just don't at that point. So our next matchup is against Sword. This guy's name is Mana Eater, which I thought was pretty sweet, but foregoing that, Sword is still a pretty strong deck, honestly, and if you are playing against a Tenko deck with Sword and you are running a decent variation of Sword, you can actually deal with things like Tenko quite easily. But in this case, since we aren't running a Tenko deck, we actually have a pretty decent matchup, as most people will tend to pick either Hermia or Mangus in the early game, so seeing that, we can at least discern that they're probably going to be pushing one of each with both of those coming like that. It's very, very hard. I mean, when you only have 2 cards that they could pick, obviously they're going to pick one of them, so being able to predict what they might go for is usually more important. So they didn't really make any other big plays, obviously no early game, which is a great advantage to us, because we can just set up as many amulets as we want, have them go off in whatever order we want, and it really did help. So this matchup isn't a great display of this deck, but I thought it was at least good enough for this video. The first match definitely showed it off in more glory. So there is the Holy Bear Tiger. Of course, even if they had had a pretty decent hand, I mean, with Snow White, Zoe, and cards like that, there's no way they would have easily got ahead of me. So we can go for our Pegasus Dullahan, boost it up, trade it in. We've got plenty of amulets. Even if they kill this Pegasus, it's coming back immediately next turn with some vengeance, so why not? There is Gawain. So his little rush effect is quite good, but it is immediately killed. Ancient Protector, perfect card to get right now. Could not ask for anything better. We can actually set up a pretty impenetrable board at this point, especially for Sword to deal with on 7. So there is one Barbarossa and a Queen Herma. That does mean they have to kill this Ancient Protector, which really sucks for them. Having to deliberately attack into that just so they could remove the big chunk of damage they would have been taking is a nightmare. So Aether gives us a nice little boost and lets us bring out another body, which at this point is the best thing I can possibly do. So putting our opponent to 8, I don't expect them to easily deal with this. Barbarossa for 2, that's pretty reasonable. Another Barbarossa for 4. And a Cthulhan, like, that's a pretty insane hand to drop on our board. Definitely a solid way to deal with this. Probably about as effective as they can get. Still not going to be enough because our Evo kills them anyway, but wow, I was impressed they managed to deal with things that well. So while that last match was pretty heavily favoured in our situation, it did give a good show off on how many amulets and things you can drop and how many good early game cards you can really use in this deck. I would have loved to have got the Zoe and Berserker combo to work in the shown matchups, but I think it's good enough that you can realise how good Berserker can be on its own. As it is, I mean, even if it just takes damage, it's great. Zoe also on its own, quite good as you saw in those matchups, even if it is pinging followers, works well with Heavenly Aegis, Berserker works well with Dark Jean. There's just multiple ways to combo these 4 cards together that works really well, and even either to pull Dark Jean isn't bad, as a 5/6, 4/6 is not the worst situation to be in. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. You'll find deck list in the description below, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.